Howdy, folks. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you, got a bit of a Dungeons Dragons video because today I would actually like to sit here, take some time, and talk about knights. But please forgive me a little bit here in advance because, yeah, I got a bit of a voice issue going on, but I want to really try to soldier through this video anyway and just discuss, in general terms, the life of a medieval knight because the thing is I think there's a major misconception about knights. I know before I really got more into medieval history that I had a lot of misconceptions about knights, mostly had to do with Hollywood games and other sources, because realistically, the life of a knight is actually very complex and very deep. And I think this is something probably people kind of ignore or don't think about. There's major misunderstandings, and with that being said, with better understanding of maybe what a knight's life was like, it would be you could be more effective at implementing knights in your Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So let's just talk about how, first off, knights really were not just warriors in shining armor. There was a lot more to it than that. Of course, there was the social class aspects of it, as well as they were just general administrators and other things of that nature. They were the elite warriors on the battlefield. And honestly, a knight's life was actually extremely hard and extremely complex and had a lot of duties and things of that nature to it. Now, we'll start off with the fact, let's just start off with the beginning of a knight's life. Essentially, now, normally these would be boys from a noble family would end up becoming pages. This would be around the age of 7, and this would begin their knightly training. Now, there would be some very basic combat training involved in this time frame, but realistically, that wasn't the main part of the training. A lot of the training was focused around reading and writing, more educational aspects, as well as about religion in itself and understanding religion. Now, of course, there was still some physical training and basic combat training aspects that were also rolled into this time period as well. Now, with that being said, this would go on for most of their time as a squire. Now, in this time frame, they would also learn some very basics about horseback riding. This is also another thing that would pretty much they would continuously learn and grow how to do throughout their life and service as a knight. Now, around the age of 14, they would actually move to becoming a squire. And this is a time frame where they would actually be attached specifically to a knight and they would take more duties. They would help the knight take care of his armor, they would help the knight suit up, things of that nature. He would also help with taking care of the horse and any weapons and bits of armor, etc. He would help with many things. Now, he would also learn medieval warfare strategies. Of course, at the time, they would have been just warfare strategies, but that was a huge part of a squire was basically learning medieval battlefield tactics and strategies. There would also be more advanced weapons training and handling involved in this time frame as well. He would learn more weapons, different weapons, and essentially just more advanced weapons as well as more advanced weapon techniques. A squire would also learn other various other skills that would be considered necessary for a knight, such as hunting or hawking, but there was a wide variety of skills that they would also learn. Now, around the age of 20, 21 is about the time where a squire would end up becoming a knight, and they would be knighted usually by a king, but it would be some type of high-end royal. There has been documentation of queens over the years actually knighting squires, but usually it would be done with a king. Now, over the years of his training, the knight would also learn the chivalric code or the code of chivalry, and a knight would be expected to follow the code of chivalry. Now, I'm going to be honest here, this was not always the case. We kind of romanticize that and want to make believe that, Every knight was the code of chivalry, and honestly, that would be farther from the truth. And with that being said, there's also some major misconceptions just within the code of chivalry in itself. And honestly, that goes so deep, I could probably do a video just on that, which I may do in the future. So if that's something that people would be interested in, kind of taking a deeper look into the code of chivalry, go ahead, comment down below, and your feedback will be much appreciated. Now, with that being said, the knight would be expected to serve his king. And, it's just that simple, without necessarily being, without, how do I want to put this? I guess what I'm trying to say is the knight would basically expect to serve his king with the utmost loyalty, as well as just being a beacon of hope and honor. With that being said, knights were not just warriors. Knights were also administrators. They would take administrative duties. They would pass judgment on certain things, basically like knights also kind of acted like the lower end court, if you will, where maybe there's a petty squabble between two farmers. A knight would deal with that, as well as a knight would also enforce the king's law, and he would also enforce the king's ruling. If whenever there, we'll just say that the king was forced to pass judgment on something in a court, the knight would actually be tasked with in making sure that the king's rule is enforced when it comes to that dealing. Now, of course, I'm sure many of you are probably asking right now is what does this mean for your Dungeons and Dragons campaign? Well, it means quite a bit. One is it would be commonplace for your characters to run into a knight or knights, even though knights were not extremely common, but they were one of the more common lower end classes of royalty, if you will, even though they really weren't royalty. Um, and they would be the elite soldiers. Now, with that being said, there's also many religions that leads to actually having holy orders of knights, something along the lines of the Knights Templar. As you got here, this is the symbol of Saint Cuthbert, and Saint Cuthbert is essentially the patron saint, the deity, if you will, of knights, as well as Bahamut. I feel Bahamut is a great one because Bahamut is a dragon god, and he is a symbol of justice and strength and many other things. Even though he's not a war or pay, how do I want to put this? He's not a symbol of war. It would still be possible to have some kind of holy order of knights actually pay. Even as I'm sitting here talking, I'm doing a playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3, and I am running a paladin, which of course is a knight. And in my head, as head canon, because you don't get options really, my patron is Bahamut because of the whole justice thing. And I am a paladin of devotion, so that kind of works out actually pretty good that way. So there's many opportunities there for knights, like a holy order of knights in general, but also knights are the elite of the battlefield. They were the tank of their time, essentially. They were the best trained warriors on the battlefield, and they also served and did many things off of the battlefield. Also, with that being said, the king's guard would more than likely be, well, actually, they would be knights. They would be very specific knights with their own very specific code that they would have to follow. Another thing actually is jousting. Knights were actually an important part of entertainment because a lot of tournaments were, a lot of knights participated in various tournaments. There would be various different things that they would do in the tournaments, and one of them would be jousting, which jousting at one point was like the most popular sporting event at tournaments. So, in general terms, people would flock into essentially arenas and watch these events of jousting, sword fighting, axe throwing, all kinds of different things. And essentially, this was a way. It wasn't just for entertainment purposes, but it was also a way for various knights to train and kind of see their skill levels and more or less dick measure. In lack of a better term, that's really what it is. They're measuring their skills against one another and also honing skills that they may not necessarily get to use that often, such as fighting. In a time of peace, knights are not really fighting, right? Well, tournaments is a great way for knights to continue growing and honing their skill. And like I said, it's a great source of entertainment. Also, within your medieval Dungeons and Dragons campaign, you would have the Black Knight. Yes, folks, there is also the Bad Knights or the Arch Paladins. I can't remember all the different things that you could really go under for the Black Knight, but essentially you would have the Black Knight. Maybe there's a quest where the party is hired to track down and bring a Black Knight to justice, a Knight of the Fallen Order, or something along those lines. A great example of a Black Knight, realistically, is right here, which is the Game of Thrones character known as the Mountain. I feel that's a great version of the Black Knight. Of course, then you got Monty Python in the Search for the Holy Grail, which is the best Black Knight. I don't care what anybody says. Monty Python Search for the Holy Grail. That is the Black Knight of Black Knights. Anyway, the next one too is essentially knights would also be enforcers as well as basically judicial. God, I'm old and shit. Sometimes I have issues pronouncing words, but essentially they would also be, sheriffs, lawmen, etc., border guards. So there would be many opportunities for player characters to run into knights as they would, like I said earlier, would pass judgment, especially in petty squabbles, as well as they would enforce the king's law or the king's ruling. So lots of opportunities for characters to run into knights there. Your temple guards, obviously paladins, are essentially knights. You'd also have cavaliers, which definitely would be knights. And then, of course, you have knight defenders. And this is just some prestige classes, folks. And then, of course, when you look at like the prestige classes that are more geared towards paladins, you have something along the lines of the Templar. So many opportunities for characters to run into knights, both within combat, I would say, and out of combat. But anyway, folks, hopefully this gives you a little bit better of an idea about knights and what they did and a little bit about their history. I think I will probably go through the code of chivalry maybe in a future video. I'm not fully sure of that yet. But like I said, folks, if you would like to see that, comment down below. Also, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video and have yourselves a wonderful day.